Hello again, this is once more Dr. Jimmy, and today is Tuesday the 17th of January 2017. 1717, oh what fun, yes, pardon me, and sitting here with my little Bob, who is still here sitting on my desk. This is the same day I started the previous video, so I'm still wearing the American Horror Story shirt I showed you before. And this then is my 5th video in my series on the history of Halloween Horror Nights 24 at Universal Studios Florida in 2014. Yes. And in the preceding video I had begun talking about the haunted house Roanoke, Cannibal Colony, which, let me take a look, yes indeed it was the 6th haunted house on my list, and it was located in building 79, the parade building, and one of the original haunted houses that year. Now, I talked a little bit about the backstory of Roanoke Colony in Virginia, although today it would be in the Carolinas. I think, is it North? I think it might be North Carolina. Yes, I think it's actually North Carolina. At first, when they split that off and called it Carolina, it was all just one state. And then they split that again into North, not state, but colony. And then they split that in half and made North and South Carolina out of it. But getting back to and I believe it was an island off the coast of what is today North Carolina, Roanoke Colony. Now, as I had said, the colony mysteriously vanished, and later other people went back to Virginia, the Virginia Company, and they set up Jamestown. That was the first successful colony in the New World, and that, of course, if you know the story of Pocahontas and Captain John Smith. Incidentally, shades of Elizabeth Warren, and Donald Trump always calls her Pocahontas, which is incorrect, because her great-great-grandmother was a Cherokee. Pocahontas was not a Cherokee. Wrong tribe. Your own Dr. Jimmy, on the other hand, my great-great-great-grandmother, who was called Eleanor Van Pelt, but her maiden name was Flick. And if you know your Virginia history, you'd know that Flick was one of the families where they assimilated many of the Virginia tribes. Some of the tribes were never given any reservations. Specifically, the Chickahominy tribe was not given any reservations. They couldn't get into any good restaurant. Bad, Jimmy. Sorry, that was offensive. No, they never got any land from the government. They wanted to deal with that tribe by assimilating them. They had their own way of trying to get rid of the natives, and they took the children of the tribe and gave them to white people to raise as white people, to raise in white culture. And they did that with many native children, including my great-great-great-grandmother. And the Flick family raised her as Eleanor Flick, but her birth name was Bird of Many Colors. So I too am part native, 1/32nd. And what's even more interesting is that, of course, even though she became Eleanor Van Pelt, when she married Tunis Van Pelt, whose own parents had come from Belgium, apparently, Eleanor never forgot her native heritage, and her siblings, also children of the tribe, who got adopted by the Flick family, Henry and Hannah Flick. But she never forgot who she was. There, in fact, are still full-blooded Chickahominies in Virginia with the surname Flick to this day, who must be cousins of mine. But the point I'm trying to make, though, is that Eleanor wasn't just from the Chickahominy tribe. She knew this, and she told her children she was from the family tribe of Powhatan, and that meant that she was in the lineage of Powhatan, who was Pocahontas's father, the guy who was going to whack Captain John Smith on the head. So, if anyone should be called Pocahontas, because I'm actually probably related to her. She's most likely some sort of really great aunt, like 12th or maybe 14th grade aunt or something, or some kind of distant cousin. But because we don't have all the bloodlines from the natives, because they didn't keep a lot of records like that, but we do know if she's of that tribe, the family tribe of Powhatan, then she's of the bloodline that includes Pocahontas. So there you go. So just call me Elizabeth Warren, I guess. But getting back, that's a personal aside. Getting back to the house in question. So they did successfully make colonies after that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be living in North America. We'd still be in England. And my fake accent would be a legitimate one. But enough of that. So no one really knew why the Roanoke colony disappeared, but there are theories, and one of the most interesting theories is that they ate each other. Now, is this a far-fetched, wild, ridiculous story? No. Because we do know that some of the earliest colonies, including Jamestown, there were outbreaks of cannibalism. Because there were some dreadful winters and food shortages, and people were forced to resort to such things. And this has always been rumored, but it has recently been proven. They did some excavating and found some bones, some human bones, that clearly had marks that indicated that they were killed and had for breakfast or dinner or lunch or whatever. Yes, they had been eaten. There were marks that clearly showed they had been eaten. So, yes, there was cannibalism in the early colonies when people resorted to such extreme measures of survival. So, that's partly what inspired the house. But another thing that inspired the house is a Native American legend. Now, if you've seen certain horror movies and episodes of Supernatural, or like Marvel Comics, there's an old legend of a creature called the Wendigo. Sometimes Wendigo, but I think Wendigo is closer to what the natives say. The Wendigo is a horrible creature that might be part elk with big antlers and like a deer, sort of deer-human hybrid creature that walks on its hind legs. Sometimes seen, but it's a horrific beast that craves the taste of human flesh. And why does it crave the taste of human flesh? Because it wasn't always this horrific supernatural evil spirit that lurks in the forest. No. Originally, Wendigos were human beings. And when a human being resorts to such a thing as cannibalism, he gets cursed by the spirit, the Gitche Manitou, and that's the Great Spirit, and is forced to become evil creature of the night, becomes the Wendigo, and remains Wendigo. I think the curse really can't be broken. He's that forever. He becomes this horrible monster because the taste of human flesh overwhelms him, and he becomes this beast that forevermore stalks human prey. Ooh, creepy story. And there've been some lovely scary movies and TV episodes about it, and even Marvel Comics villain, because I remember when I think it was Wolverine in an early comic fighting the Wendigo, and there was the Incredible Hulk was involved. I think when they first introduced him in the comics way back when, and then he showed up in Alpha Flight as one of the great beasts in Alpha Flight back in the 80s. If you're at old-time Marvel Comics, and I don't know what they've done with the character recently, but in that case it was like a great big white gorilla-looking thing, abominable snowman-like creature, not like the one in the Legends, which is more deer-like. Anyway, so the idea is that the colony of Roanoke not having enough food to eat. The crops have failed and they need to eat. And the legend of the Wendigo is known because the natives have told them about it, and they eat each other, and the legend comes true. They don't transform physically, but they're maybe it's a psychological thing, I don't know, but somehow they are compelled. They believe they've been cursed by the Wendigo, and they are compelled to devour human flesh. That's all they can think of. They must eat human flesh. Arr, arr, meat, meat, meat! And that's what you heard through the house as they scream, the cry, meat, meat, meat! And they want more of it. And in fact, they want it so much that when they can't eat somebody else, they start eating themselves. And some of them have chewed their own lips off and leaving a great gaping with teeth, you know, and no lips because they've been, they want to eat meat so badly they're eating their own flesh. And so you go into the house and you go through a cornfield of ruined crops, and there's scarecrows up there, and they're humans, of course, and one of them, you know, crucified, and a crow is sitting on the shoulder and has pecked out an eyeball. And you go into the great fort. And of course, because we always like to kick Mickey in the balls, you know, I couldn't help, you know, like before, the Forsaken reminded me of Pirates of the Caribbean, and Winter's Night reminded me of the Haunted Mansion. This one, the first thing I thought was Fort Wilderness. It's Frontierland. That's what it looked like, and it says Roanoke, and you go in the colony, and you have all of the, you know, the colonial places, all the little buildings and things, and the colonists are crazy, insane, they want your flesh, and especially as you pass by a boarding that's been boarded off, and they're inside and they're reaching through the slatted windows shouting, meat, meat, meat. And when you go in, of course, it's just fucking nuts. You have scene after scene of depravity, bodies that have been ripped open, people eating the entrails, people eating themselves, eating each other, and wonderful scenes. One of my favorite rooms because, well, I have a confession to make. Smoking is a nasty habit. It stains your teeth. It gives you a cough. It killed Walt Disney and John Wayne and many other wonderful people. Yul Brynner has gone. So many people got lung cancer. Smoking's a really nasty habit. Makes you spit. All kinds of things. And I do not recommend it to anyone. I would never smoke cigarettes. But, as you might have known from some previous videos, I do indulge myself in the finer cigars. I don't smoke them all the time. I don't go through them all day like someone smokes a cigarette, because who could afford that if they're good cigars? You know, they're not cheap. So I have, you know, maybe one or two every couple of days, especially on special occasions. I had a wonderful hand-rolled cigar on New Year's Eve, for example, after I was done singing my concert. But, yes, there's a choir that I'm part of that gives a big concert every New Year's Eve, but I can't talk too much about that because it's a secret cabal. Anyway, but getting back to the cigars, they're wonderful. And so the smell of fine tobacco is one of my favorite aromas. And because, of course, the tobacco crop was one of the main things that was going on in Virginia at that time, you go in this room and, oh my God, it's a tobacco room where they got the leaves hanging. People had seen some of these pictures or had seen stuff going in when the thing was being built, and they thought there were going to be bats hanging from the trees. No. It was tobacco leaves drying. And the room just smelled the wonderful aroma of fine tobacco. It's like, oh my God, I could hang out in here all day. Of course, then you have in the same room, the cannibals are coming after you, and more hideous, especially ones that have, and victims that have like most of their skin ripped off, and so they're all raw. The whole body, you see all their muscles and organs and stuff, and they're still alive. Oh, quite a lot of fun. And there's rooms There's piles of corpses, piles of bones, stuffed half-chewed people in prison who are going to be eaten. Just scene after scene of glorious cannibalistic carnage. So I have to remember what the highlights are. A friend of mine who went through the house with me, a young lad named Kent. You might know him as JW. I call him Scotty for reasons that are kind of obscure. But anyway, he's a bit pedantic about things, worse than I am sometimes, and he just couldn't handle the house. And he didn't mind gore and cannibalism. He got annoyed by anachronisms. Every time he's like, and it's in full on nerdism. They're wearing 18th century pilgrim costumes. This is 17th century. They should, he just, actually it was 16th century. They should be wearing Elizabethan costumes, is what he meant. Because that's true. Roanoke was a very early colony after the discovery of the New World. They should be wearing 16th century, not 17th. So they're wearing 17th century costumes like the Pilgrims in Massachusetts or the Salem witch trials, with the black hats, with the thing, and those white collars. And there were some dressed just like that, including my friend Scott, who's currently living in Japan. Scott, you can. Another big shout out. You can do it. See his videos. They're hysterical. They're wonderful. You get to see scenes of horror nights in Japan and other things that go on at Universal Studios Japan. He also travels around Japan and takes wonderful videos of all sorts of wonderful stuff that's going a crazy country, all kinds of wonderful stuff. So again, I must highly recommend. He recently went to Germany too and got some wonderful Krampus footage last Christmas when he went to Germany. So go check out his YouTube page. You can do it. It's YUKENDOIT. Go see it. I highly recommend it. He was still living in the United States in 2014 and worked for Universal as a scare actor, and he was a scare actor as a zombie the year before in Resident Evil. This was the last time he was a scare actor at Universal, because after that he went to Japan. So if you caught him that year, he was one of these guys dressed in a pilgrim outfit and standing in front of where there was a projection of a fire, like part of the building was burning, and saying things like, "You are not a righteous man," or something like that. And he saw me and was, "Oh," he said something like, "Arrogant doctor, repent of your ways," something like that. It was quite fun to have that. So it was. I really liked that bit that he did there. But Scott, he couldn't stand it. Little Kent looks at the pilgrim hat and outfit like something from Thanksgiving cards and says, "No, no, no, that's the wrong damn century." Because, of course, Roanoke Colony was in the 16th century. They would have been wearing Elizabethan outfits, And I must commend American Horror Story, because when they did the Roanoke program and the stuff that's part of the reality show, the footage that they shoot, the reenactments, they do also show some pilgrim-like costumes in Roanoke. But when the ghosts show up for real, and you see the real butcher, she's wearing this beautiful Elizabethan gown, and she's quite awesome. And she makes Kathy Bates in her pilgrim dress look stupid, and it slams her with the cleaver. Spoiler alert, but maybe we'll see something like that in this year's haunted house, if they do Roanoke, if they do American Horror Story House. I hope so. But as I said, Kent couldn't handle the anachronisms. But the climactic scene was also awesome. This great big barn-like structure, and there's bodies everywhere, and carnage and meat, and people that have been half-eaten, and people who are trying to get after you. Even though part of them is gone and they've been eaten, they still want to eat you. Isn't that awesome? And they're coming after you. And dead dogs and all kinds of wonderful stuff. But the dogs are not eaten. They eat people. They don't even care about the dead dogs. And then you go into this last big barn, and here you come face to face with the complete batshit colonists who think they are the Wendigo. And they come out, and you think it's the Wendigo at first, because this huge figure, this towering figure with horns, antlers, comes out and calling on the name of the Wendigo. Except you suddenly realise the guy's on stilts, and it's a colonist wearing a headdress with horns and stuff, and in native makeup and feathers and stuff, because they've completely given in to the legend of the Wendigo and are actually dressing up and trying to recreate this beast in their own image at the end. And so you're confronted with the spirit of Wendigo, or perhaps they're possessed by the spirit of Wendigo and have taken on this aspect for the purpose, like a voodoo horse. And we'll get to this later when we get to the scare zones. You know what a horse is? In voodoo, a horse is a person who becomes possessed by one of the voodoo gods, or spirits, really, the lower. And they like to enjoy human life, so they come and visit us by inhabiting a person, and then that person becomes, for a while, the persona of that spirit and communes with the worshippers. And they call him a horse, because it's like, if you're riding a horse, the horse doesn't go where it wants, it goes where you want. And so basically the lower is riding the human like a horse, Gundam style. Riding you like a horse, and basically in charge while you're being mounted by the lower, so to speak. So maybe that's what was going on. These people are being controlled by the possessing spirit of the Wendigo. But it was an impressive house and very spectacular. I liked it quite a bit. And I always got hungry when I got out of that house and had to go find a turkey leg or something. Meat! 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 Yes, not a good house for vegetarians. All right, so I'm down to the last two houses. The seventh house was in what is officially, I believe, called World Expo, Warehouse Number 1, or what is actually Sprung Tent 1, as we call it, and that was the house, the third original house, the Dollhouse of the Damned, the Dollhouse of the Damned. And that house, as I had said, according to what I've heard afterwards, was meant to be the icon house for a creepy little girl character who actually had created all of these dolls through her supernatural powers and experiments on human victims and such. Again, the character was mostly dropped. All references to her in the house description were excised, even though they appeared originally on the website. Then that was changed. But she did appear briefly in one scene in the house. If you remember, there's a scene where a little girl asks if you want to play doctor. Well, that was her. In the original concept, I think she would have been all through the house, and perhaps it would be named after her or whatever. But whoever that little girl is, it wasn't Cindy, but another creepy little kid, is now just a footnote in the history of Horror Nights and not a lead player. We don't even know who the kid was, but she was one of the non-dolls in the house. And apparently she was behind the whole thing. Now, nevertheless, part of that storyline remains, obviously, because you could tell that the house had originally been a mortuary. There were viewing rooms, there was a morgue, there was a freezer. There were things you would find in a mortuary that had been overlaid and turned into this mad dollhouse of the damned. The outside of the house was complete chaotic nightmare. It was like, remember Pee-wee's house and Pee-wee's Big Adventure with all the ridiculous lawn ornaments and everything, all the little figures and toys and reindeer and everything on the roof and lights? Imagine if that had been done by, someone possessed by Satan rather than a happy-go-lucky child man. And so you have this house, and it's covered with doll bits and pieces, really creepy little doll heads and little arms and legs all stacked up on the side, and all these little doll bits and pieces and bright colors of lavender and green and everything. It turns the whole house into a hellish dollhouse, like a child's toy, but now made full size. And when you go in, you find yourself in one room after another with creepy doll toys coming to life, some with human bits, some without. There's a rag doll room where you see all sorts of dolls being ripped apart and sewn back together again, and there's sort of a Raggedy Ann doll hanging up there, except half of her is missing, and she's partly alive because she comes to life and startles you. And you go through weird corridors of this mortuary where bits of dolls are nailed to the wall. There's a head here, there's a leg there. It's all very creepy. And then you go through different scenes of the mortuary that have been incorporated thematically into different sort of doll rooms. For example, there's one room that's all about teddy bears, okay, and you have plush toy animals with bits and pieces like put to the wall, like Teddy Ruxpin's head. You know, it kind of like as if the plush animals had been hunted and used as a trophy from a hunter. And as you look through it, then you start to realize there's some human trophies as well. If you know the old thing about the bearskin rug, you know, they get a bearskin rug and you always take a picture of a baby on it or whatever. Well, here over a fireplace is a human skin rug, and his butt, this big, round, perfectly plump buttocks, and it's all human skin, but the butt is sticking out, like somehow they stuffed that part to make it round, and the human head going, you know, on the end of it. And of course, being a smart aleck, I couldn't help but look at it when I walked in and said, that ass. And then of course you see one of the perpetrators, the big game hunter, comes out, and he's a teddy bear. He's a teddy bear with a gun, boom, and dressed in a hunter's jacket. So you had that. And there's the mortuary scene where there's a body on the slab that's being turned into a doll, and the little girl wants to play doctor. And there's a wonderful scene where there's a creepy old lady whose mouth has been sewn shut. Perhaps it's the girl's grandmother, and she's like combing a doll's hair. And it's a room full of, again, rooms full of creepy dolls everywhere, and you never know which might be alive. The old trick of the plush animal thing that jumps up out of the chair was repeated, I believe. But there was a cameo appearance in the house. If you look carefully, in that scene, you would see a doll that you might recognize. A little lad with bright red hair and freckles, and a little what do you call it? Like it's made out of denim, but it has the little flaps that go up here. So what are those things called? Overalls, yeah. Little denim overalls and a striped shirt. And his face has been kind of messed up and sewn back together. I think his name was Charles Lee Ray. Yeah, it's Chucky. Chucky is in the house. He's sort of just sitting in a corner, and another little girl doll is like bowing before him. Kind of wonder if what services she's going to offer to him, because Chucky's a naughty boy. So Chucky actually made a guest appearance in the house as a doll, not as a character. Thus, the reference to Child's Play in the brochure was a bit of a gag, I think, a little inside joke. There were all sorts of other dolls, and at the end of the house it got really surreal. You had these rooms full of mirrors and ballerina dolls and soldier dolls that would come to life, and horrible, gigantic baby doll heads up on the wall, and some of them had human bodies hanging out of their mouths, as if those little baby doll heads had been eating people. It was just rather creepy. The whole house was creepy. It wasn't scary like, oh my God. It was just creepy and disturbing. And there were, especially dolls and children, it kind of is disturbing when you think about it. And one of the most disturbing rooms was the baby doll room. Yes, you went into the room, and there were these children's cribs, babies' cribs, on every side, and there were baby dolls in them. Now, they had adult scare actors in diapers, of course, and they picked, you know, short ones that would, and had big baby doll heads on. So it was like these giant-sized baby dolls, and they're in there, and they're reaching through the bars, and there's a horrible smell of talcum powder, like baby powder, and something less savory. What is that smell? It's diaper? Ooh. And the babies had, like, oh, they've been playing with chocolate pudding and smearing it on the walls and writing horrible things, and oh wait, that's not chocolate pudding. Oh shit! Exactly. And there was one great big obese man as a baby going, ah! And then just bloody awful and creepy as hell. So it was one of the creepiest houses I've ever had the pleasure of going through. And quite lovely, the Dollhouse of the Damned. So, one house left. The last house, the 8th house, my favorite house of the event, which was in Sprung Tent 2. We'll get to that in the next video, which I believe is part 6, and that is Halloween.